Version 4.1. Initializing upgrades. Accessing peace. Existing without violence, with the ability to calmly resolve conflict. Downloading love. An overwhelming, deep, positive affection towards others. Activating liberty. Living your life as you see fit without infringing on the lives of others.
Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I am your host, Darryl W. Perry, the Liberty Penguin, the Wombat. And, you know, I was hoping that my voice would be back to 100%, and it sounds mostly all right, but every now and then I've got a bit of a cough and some phlegm and still a little bit of congestion, and again, that happens this time of year. It's the weird allergy stuff. The leaves start to die, and they change colors because they're dying, and some people are like, oh, isn't it just absolutely wonderful and pretty? And I'm like, but all that's happening is the leaves are dying. Like, I don't understand the fascination. And yes, this is me kind of, you know, like being, some people would say a pessimist. I look at it as I'm a realist. Like, what is happening is the leaves are dying, and then they're going to fall off of the trees. Yes, sometimes it's pretty, but all that it is the leaves dying. If you were a leaf, you would not be like, oh, this is the most amazing thing ever. I'm turning this shade of orange, and now I'm brown and falling off of a tree, but it's amazing. No, if you were a leaf, you'd be like, oh, this is absolutely horrible. You would. Trust me. I'm guessing. I don't think that leaves actually have thoughts, but who knows? But I mentioned the thing about the leaves intentionally, you know, partly, yes, because that is why I have this weird, you know, seasonal allergy thing, but also leaves are out in nature. And I realize that, you know, that's a very Captain Obvious statement, but I'm trying to do a segue here, because I've got a story about how spending time in nature is good for you. Aside from the fact of you're breathing fresh air and you're getting, you know, natural vitamin D and all of the other benefits of not being cooped up inside of a building. But there's actually some benefits to you being what basically would be considered a decent human being. The article headline is, Science Explains How Spending Time in Nature Boosts Kindness and Generosity. As I said, being in nature allows you to be a decent human being. The article begins, according to research that has taken place in Japan, Finland, and Texas, people who took walks or were shown images of nature were found to have a natural decline in heart rate. So it's not just being in nature that will decline or decrease your heart rate. It's also being shown pictures of nature. When stress becomes an overwhelming burden, they say it's the exact opposite. If nature can reduce the stress levels riveting people's lives, then generosity and kindness are bound to follow. When agitated, it can be difficult to take the time needed to make sure you are calm and collected. You might snap at your friend or something that they said without even realizing it. Your nerve endings have taken the increased heart rate into a zone of animosity that can be quelled by visiting the wonders of the earth. Now, this is not guaranteed to work on everybody, as, you know, nothing is. You know, there's never a one-size-fits-all, this is absolutely going to work sort of thing, because, you know, people can be irritable or irritated at something other than just being stressed. And I know, because one of the symptoms that I have of post-concussion syndrome is increased irritability. And yes, it is one of those things to where if I'm slightly stressed, then I'm a lot more irritable than I would otherwise be. But, like there are times when I'll just be, like going through my day and somebody says, the wrong thing, and I just, sort of whatever. But let me continue with the article here. Participants in studies from the University of California have been done on kindness to see if kindness is more willing to be shown in nature. In economics games, the trust game and the dictator game, trust and generosity were measured. It was found that the people who viewed images of beautiful nature acted more trusting and kind than people who were not shown similar images. In a separate study about kindness, individuals were asked to fill out emotional surveys while either sitting next to plants or next to visually stunning plants. After the survey, people were asked if they would volunteer making paper cranes. The researchers noted that the participants who sat next to the plants were more generous and more willing to make more paper cranes. Now, that is something that is very interesting. And I wonder if there are places that have plants in their offices just because they know that, if we have plants around here, people are more willing to do whatever we ask of them. So, as with everything, people can wind up taking advantage of things. The sociopaths could wind up reading this study. People around plants are more willing to do what you ask of them. All right, I'll put plants all through my house. I'll put plants all through my office. I'll put plants everywhere that I think I'll be around somebody, and then they're more willing to do whatever I say. Because that's the way sociopaths work, is they want to take advantage of people. And, well, as long as, I'm not forcing them to do anything, I'll just, suggest all of these horrible things that will happen if they don't go along with whatever my plan is. But I'm not forcing them. And look, there's plants everywhere. And studies say that if people are near plants, they're more willing to do stuff. The article here continues, and I realize that, I'm taking this and sort of turning it to show you sort of the worst of people, or the worst of what people could do. But this, I think is a really fascinating study, and there's more, and I promise that I will try to, stay more positive. I need to be around plants. That's it. I need plants. There's more. Stay tuned. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $1 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
Cell 411 is a free app for Android and iOS that replaces government-controlled 911. Cell 411 allows you to preset a group of friends or private organizations to show up in any emergency. Cell 411 is a nightmare for the state because it proves their so-called services aren't needed. Cell 411 has had thousands of installs, and of course it's covered by the BIPCOT no government license. Cell 411 because your friends won't shoot you when you're in trouble. Without the government, who would build the emergency services? You and Cell 411. Get it today at getcell411.com. That's getcell411.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Jumping back into the article, this type of research, and that's the research about, people that are more generous when they're around plants. They're more willing to volunteer to do things that are asked of them. They seem to be a little kinder when they're around plants. This type of research gives a small look at the many values that nature offers. And the best part is, it's everywhere around us. Nature, not studies, that is. Think back to the times when you were younger and running around during recess. the imagination as free and wild as can be. Think of the times of playing in the park and being free, meeting other kids who were willing to play games with you. There's a natural kindness that seeps through us when we're just sitting in the presence of nature's landscapes. And, this makes me think and wonder if one of the problems that we have in society today is that kids aren't necessarily allowed to be kids anymore. And I know that this is something that a lot of people harp on, but, just where it talks here about, like running around as a kid and playing with other kids. I remember when I was younger, just, like going somewhere and there'd be, people playing whatever, and they'd be like, hey, you want to play with us? What are we playing? I don't know. We're kind of making up the rules. And then people would just, like go along with it. Just do whatever. Like, oh, yeah, we're playing this game, and there's, some kind of ball, and they would just make up rules of whatever. And everybody had fun. But now you can't let your kid just walk to the park. There's so many stories that I've read of parents that have had CPS show up to their house because they let their kid walk to the park that's at the end of the block. Like, the parents could see the park from their house, but CPS showed up because kids were playing in the park unsupervised. And we're not talking about like 2 and 3 year old kids. We're talking about kids that, are like 8, 9, 10, early teenagers playing in the park unsupervised. When I was like 5 or 6 years old, probably younger than that, I would ride my bicycle with my brother about somewhere between half to 3/4 of a mile away from the park where my dad and stepmom were working. And we would cross First Avenue in Birmingham, Alabama, to go get food from Burger King. We would ride our bikes from East Lake Park around to the other side of the lake, from the concession stand around to the other side of the lake, up, First Avenue, or there's another street, Porto Madrid, and then something. But, we would ride our bikes several blocks away and then cross a major street. Like a 5 lanes of traffic. We would ride our bikes across the street, go to Burger King, get food, and then ride back. And now, if, somebody were to let their kid do that, CPS would show up, knocking on the front door and demanding to know why their children were unsupervised. And that's one of the problems that we have in this country today, is we don't allow kids to be kids. We don't allow kids to just run around outside and play. When I was like 9, I would ride my bike through the woods back behind the house that we lived in for hours at a time. Like hours. I would, wake up, eat breakfast, go outside, and just ride bike through the woods for hours with the other kids in the neighborhood. And then, at some point I'd get hungry and I'd come home. And, there was no adult supervision. There were no cell phones. God forbid anything happened to us in the middle of the woods. But that was, childhood. And, of course, now all of that back behind the house that I lived in, trustful, it's all roads and subdivisions and everything else. I don't really know if, outside of living in the middle of the country, if there are woods that kids can just run around in. Like, I know where I live now in Keene, New Hampshire. There are, some parks, and there's what they call the rail trail, where they've added, like bike and walking paths near where there used to, at one time, a long, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, had been a train track. That's like bike and walking paths now. But I never see, anybody other than adults walking on that. There's never, like teenagers or, people younger than teenagers walking on that, unless, they might be walking with their parents. But, I hardly ever see those in use. And that's, like the designated walk in nature area. And I rarely see people walking in nature. So, like maybe that's one of the, we need to get out of the, quote unquote, concrete jungle and get back to nature, and people would be a lot nicer to one another. Maybe. The article here continues with something that I just touched on. They say there's a reason why people in cities are always viewed as standoffish. Everyone is walking around with massive buildings, and through crowded streets, there's trash laying dormant on the street, cars impatiently waiting for you to cross the sidewalk, and a lack of the green embrace of the world. The author here says, in my head, I see cities textured in a gray fog. When I think of nature, I see illustrious images with full colors and the world instead of the man-made towers that constrict and take away from that. The researchers from California also made the observation that positive emotions come from being surrounded by nature, which begins to emanate from individuals as prosocial. Oh, wow. I just had one of those weird sort of brain farts where I saw a word and I'm like, I have no clue how to pronounce this. Prosocial. I don't know what prosocial means, but if you're in nature, you're prosocial and prosocial, and you have kind behavior. Maybe the next time you're feeling caught under and ready to snap, think of taking a refreshing walk through nature. Let the air blow through your hair and instill the generosity in your soul. Stay tuned to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. There's more that we're going to delve into, including how to tell if you might be a healer and not realize it. Stay tuned. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $1 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
Cell 411 is a free app for Android and iOS that replaces government-controlled 911. Cell 411 allows you to preset a group of friends or private organizations to show up in any emergency. Cell 411 is a nightmare for the state because it proves their so-called services aren't needed. Cell 411 has had thousands of installs, and of course it's covered by the BIPCOT no government license. Cell 411 because your friends won't shoot you when you're in trouble. Without the government, who would build the emergency services? You and Cell 411. Get it today at getcell411.com. That's getcell411.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Hey, welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I want to make sure that I mention before we get to the end of the show, and I'm like, I don't have time to mention this. The voting for the FPP Peace Prize ends on Tuesday. That would be Tuesday, the 8th of October. So when you go to the polls, assuming that you vote, and I know not everybody does, that's fine. You don't have to. But, if you do vote in, these U.S. elections that may or may not be rigged, but no matter who wins, we lose because they're going to wind up growing the government at the federal level. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are equally horrible in my eyes, which is why I'm not voting for either of them. The Libertarian candidate is not actually a Libertarian. Yes, he's better than the other ones, but that should not be the criteria for being the Libertarian presidential candidate. The Libertarian Party presidential candidate should actually be a Libertarian, but I digress. So, if you have not yet done so, go to peaceprize.xyz. And if you're on a mobile device, the site might not show up the way that it should. There is going to be a poll on the right-hand side if you're on a desktop or a laptop. Hopefully it shows up that way on your mobile device. You might have to scroll all the way down and then click View Full Site to see the actual voting. And it uses approval voting, which means you can vote for as many of the people as you want. So none of this, pick one. There can only be one person that you pick. Nope. Vote for as many people as you like to be the recipient of the 2016 FPP Peace Prize. Again, peaceprize.xyz. Voting ends Tuesday night at midnight. The winner/winners, if there are multiple, and yes, there can be multiple winners of the FPP Peace Prize. The winner/winners will be announced the first weekend of December. And that actually means that the winner will be announced on the anniversary episode of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio that happens December 2nd. So, again, head over to peaceprize.xyz before Tuesday night, or rather before the end of the night on Tuesday. Cast your vote. So how do you know if you are a healer? And what exactly do I mean by healers? The article here comes from a website, Mind Body Green. They say because modern culture does not have a role for the shamanic archetype, many people who grow up outside indigenous villages are shamans, healers, who have access to the spirit world and don't know it. Many naturally wind up in overtly healing professions, such as medicine, psychology, or even being a life coach. They'll take part in various forms of sacred activism and spend their lives healing the planet, for example, rather than healing people. But some wind up in professions where they may feel like they don't fit in at all. The article here continues, even those who enter the healing professions may feel out of place because the systems of Western medicine and psychology leave little room for a shaman to practice his or her natural art of healing, which may include such unconventional practices as intuitive medicine, ritual, and communicating with spirits. The author says, note, I wrote this article to honor the shamanic traditions, not to violate it in any way. I feel indebted to the shamans who saw themselves in me and helped me understand why I always felt like I did not belong in mainstream medicine. So here are 10 signs or 10 ways to tell if you are a healer and don't know it or don't realize it. Number 1, you sense that you're meant to participate in the global shift of consciousness that is currently underway. We can all feel it. The author writes, this impending shift that New Agers have talked about for decades. But those with the shamanic archetype don't just feel it, they feel it pulling them like a magnet towards leadership positions that help facilitate this transformation of human consciousness and evolution of the species. Number 2, and as I'm going through this, I can actually think of several people that I think that this applies to. Some of them are people that I know listen to this show. So if you think that I'm talking directly to you right now, I probably am. Number 2, you've been through a difficult initiation, which has prepared you for this leadership role. In indigenous cultures, the village knew who the shaman was because he or she was struck by lightning and survived. In modern culture, you may not have literally been struck by lightning, but you may have survived other life or heart-threatening ordeals. You may have experienced childhood abuse, violence, a near-death experience, or some other trauma that forged you into the healing earth shaman that you are becoming. Number 3, you are an introvert. Shamans are multidimensional beings who dance between the realms of the seen and the unseen. So if you're of the shamanic archetype, you may have a hard time navigating the 3D realms of this dimension, which may cause you to withdraw into yourself so you can visit the realms of consciousness where you feel most at home. And there are 6 more on this list. And as always, the link will be in the show notes. You can read it at your leisure if you decide to do so. And because we're low on time, I'm probably just going to hit the highlights. Stay tuned. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Are you sick of government lackeys who say you didn't build that? Are you tired of elitists who think you need a government permission slip for everything? Everything you do is an A to B conversation, and the government should see their way out of it. Create true free markets by adopting the BIPCOT No Government License. The BIPCOT No Gov license allows use or modification of any product, service, or software except by governments or government agents. Go to BIPCOT.org. That's Bravo, India, Papa, Charlie, Oscar, Tango.org.
Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com.
Hi, this is Roger Paxton from the Lava Flow Podcast, the Free Coast Freecast, and Pax Libertas Productions, and you're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Are you a healer? Do you know if you are? If you answered no to the first question, you probably answered no to the second question, because if you don't know it, then you wouldn't have said, yes, I'm a healer, right? Well, we're going over 10 ways, or rather 10 signs that you might be a healer and don't realize it. Again, I'll just run through the first 3 here. You sense that you're meant to participate in the global shift of consciousness that is currently underway. You've been through a difficult initiation of some sort that has prepared you for a leadership role. You're an introvert. You feel most at home in nature. The shamans of a culture are the bridges between nature and humans. They serve as translators between the mountains, the oceans, the river, the animals, and the people. You may sense that you're most turned on or tuned in when surrounded by the natural world. Number 5 on the list, you are very sensitive. You may have feelings that others don't feel. You may see things others don't see. You hear things that others don't hear. You smell things they don't smell, etc. If you embody the shamanic archetype, you're likely the kind of person that people say is too sensitive, but this sensitivity is a blessing. It is part of your gift. You feel a sort of spiritual calling to ease the suffering of people, animals, and nature. And again, I'm going to skip the paragraphs here and continue. Physical ailments that fall under the category of shaman sickness. This I will touch on. They say in indigenous cultures, shamans who have been called to service but haven't yet said yes to the call may often wind up with physical ailments. In modern culture, these shamanic sicknesses may fall into the difficult-to-treat categories like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, chronic Lyme disease, chronic pain disorders, etc. You tend to have vivid dreams. You may discover unusual spiritual superpowers, or what the yogis call siddhis. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, S-I-D-D-H-I-S. They say you might be a psychic, you might get healing visions, you might realize that you can heal people with your hands, or that you can telepathically communicate with animals, people, or even inanimate objects. I know that I like to think that I can speak for what the trees are saying and what tables and cats, but I don't think I actually can. I can just sort of empathize. And finally, you've always felt like you just don't quite belong anywhere because you are a bridge. There's definitely more to this article. It will be in the show notes. I'll be back on Monday, and don't forget, every Wednesday I answer your questions. Send those over ama@fppradio.com.
The podcasts of FPP Radio are licensed under Copy Heart. We believe that copying is a form of flattery and do not abide by the copyright laws. Those laws serve to restrict the flow of ideas which no one can really own. Copying is an act of love. Love is not subject to law. If you enjoy the show, consider joining the Fans program and get perks like ad-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio and FPP Radio News, and also get a copy of the monthly newspaper FPP News. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.